Hello, everybody. Welcome to Better at Work. I hope you're all well and I hope you're enjoying season 4 of our show. Now, I got to recently sit down with someone I've wanted to chat to for quite a while, Zach Mercurio. Now, Zach is the author of a brilliant book called The Power of Mattering. The book really takes a really hard look at research around how important it is to feel like you matter at work, the positive impacts on that, and the negative impacts if people do not feel like they matter. He's got some great frameworks, amazing insights, and some seriously great stories and examples from his research over the last few years. I cannot wait for you to hear this discussion with Zach. He's a great guy. He's fun as well. We had a lot of laughs actually on this particular one. I hope you enjoy it. And please, please, please don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, don't forget we're also on YouTube now. So check us out there where you can see the entire thing on video. Enjoy this chat and I'll talk to you soon. Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Better at Work. On this episode, I'm joined by Zach Mercurio. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Zach. Zach is actually coming to us from Fort Collins, a place I know and love well in Colorado. Welcome, Zach, to Better at Work.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. Now, listen, we start every conversation with this question. Where did it all start for you, Zach? What happened in your early life or along the way that drove this interest in helping people ensure they matter at work?
I won't go into early life, but I'm going to go into a place where I first saw the absence of mattering and the toll it took. And it was in my first study that we did when I was a PhD student studying organizational development. And we embedded ourselves with a group of janitors. So these are the people that clean every single day. They often are invisible. They're rendered invisible by the environment and their shifts. They come in overnight when nobody's looking. And I remember there was a moment when I was sitting with this group of janitors. We embedded ourselves with them for a year and a half, and we were in this break room. And I remember a building user was walking down the hall, and they had a piece of paper. They had crumpled up some trash. They threw it at the trash can. It hit the edge of the trash can, landed on the floor, and they just kept walking right by. And I remember another janitor turned to me and she goes, "That's every day for us. We experience that every single day." And what I found is that we were looking at what contributed to thriving employees in that occupation and what contributed to those who weren't thriving. And after that study, there was one key difference, that the people who were thriving and found their work meaningful and were motivated experienced regular moments of mattering, regular moments where a leader looked them in the eye, remembered their name, remembered their kids' name, remembered something about their lives, offered them compassion, or moments when someone reframed their job. You know, I tell this story all the time because it's an anchoring story for me, that in one of our first interviews, we had this woman named Jane who is near homelessness before she got this job. She applied to like 15 jobs. No job would take her. She just got a high school diploma, and she was miserable. She had gotten this job basically because she had to. And she came in every day during that first month. She would clock in, she would clock out. She said she would say to herself, "Why am I just a janitor?" She had been there for 25 years when I was interviewing her. So I was like, "What changed, Jane? Why are you here?" And she goes, "Oh, it was a couple of minutes with my supervisor. I remember very vividly, he noticed I was struggling. He brought me into this break room. He had me open up this dictionary to the word custodian and read it out loud as a person responsible for a building and everyone in it. And he actually had me look at these students that were walking around, and he said, "These are someone's precious child, and I want you to remember this. I never want you to forget that every time you look out there, that this is someone's precious child, and they are entrusting you with their health. And that's why you're here. I don't care how you got this job. That's why you exist in this job." And she said that moment completely altered the belief systems about herself, and it led her to stay at the university for over 25 years. She's one of the most sought after janitors right now. But this is what we find, right? It's small moments where people show us the evidence of our significance. And he didn't tell her, "Hey, Jane, you matter." He showed her through that dictionary exactly how she mattered. He showed her. And then since that study, over the past decade, we have seen more and more people report that they feel invisible, overlooked, unheard, unvalued, unseen. That's manifesting in disengagement and
Mm.
loneliness. Um, and we said, there's something, we have an answer for this. And it's called mattering. It's called creating moments where people feel seen, heard, valued, and needed. And that's what led to the work that we're doing now.
I mean, the work is absolutely brilliant. I mean, the book, The Power of Mattering, I've loved it actually. It's been great. I've been telling everyone about the book actually because it's got a lot of practical advice and application in there, and we'll talk through some of that today as well. Now, you start the book really talking about how as soon as we're born, we have this need to matter to someone. When children feel important to adults, they develop a secure base. But you say it's the same for adults. In fact, you say the unending search for significance is the essential force animating human behavior. Tell us a little bit more, because I really thought that was a great way to start the book.
Absolutely. I mean, so the first thing we do as human beings is we search to be important enough to someone else so they'll keep us alive. Researchers call this our grasp reflex. I experienced it when I met my son for the first time. He reached out his arm and grasped my index finger really tightly. Everybody listening right now, at any level in any organization, your first act was to search for significance. You wouldn't be here listening if at some point you hadn't mattered enough to another human being to keep you alive. That instinct, just like the instinct to sleep, the instinct to eat, does not go away. As we grow up into adulthood, we go to school, we go to work. That instinct to matter to others, to be important to others, turns into the fundamental need to feel seen, heard, valued, and needed by others. And that's key to understanding what mattering is. Mattering happens when that need is met, when we are seen, when we are heard, when we are valued by those around us, when we see how we add value to the world, the organization around us, we experience what psychologists call mattering. So mattering is that feeling of being significant. I think it's important that we tie it back to a survival instinct because it gets us out of the realm that this is somehow touchy-feely, this is the
Yes.
fluffy stuff, this is the soft stuff.
Soft stuff, yeah.
Showing someone how they matter is just about as touchy-feely as feeding them if they were hungry.
COVID, Zach, I think really showed us who were the people that mattered, right? Because suddenly logistics, delivery drivers, we were all like in Australia, toilet paper was gone out of the shops, right? People were like, what the hell, and we really did have this kind of moment of like, actually, the doctors, the nurses, and the people delivering our food and the teachers, they matter, right? It was just such a leveler for a lot of people who, I don't know how you felt about that during COVID. Like, did it make you think that, we had it wrong previously of who actually mattered?
Well, I think COVID did a few things. One of my friends remarked to me that COVID felt apocalyptic. And I like that word apocalypse. I don't like that word, but I like the meaning of the word apocalypse, which means to reveal. And I think that COVID allowed us to reveal this fundamental need to matter. It revealed the mattering deficit that we're all facing. There's a few things that happened. One is we had more time to reflect on the quality of our lives and of our work. People started thinking to themselves, why am I spending 1/3 of my waking life doing this for an organization that doesn't care for me? The second is that people began to see that they were essential. So now you have all of these people telling you that you're essential, and then you start asking, well, do I feel essential? It's why in August 2023, more frontline workers went on strike than all of the 21st century combined. There was this collective demand for dignity. And at the same time all of that was happening, there was increasing choice of where, when, and how to earn a living. People could work remotely. People could work hybrid online. People could drive an Uber. People could do gig work. So the access to different modes of working changed. This is going to keep happening in perpetuity. And when people have more choices, they have more discernment, and people often discern how they want to spend their time based on how they feel. So all of those forces really came together 5 years ago to reveal this mattering deficit. And now we layer on what's happened over those past 5 years is more people now are reporting that they feel invisible. Work
Mm.
Human finds that 30% of people self-report they feel quote unquote invisible or flat out ignored in work. We're more disengaged than ever. 8 out of 10 people feel lonely. The opposite of loneliness, by the way, is not having more people around you. It's feeling that you matter to the people around you. And so we are seeing this collective mattering deficit, and we're just now naming it. And if organizations don't do something about it, um, it will erode motivation, commitment, performance, and people tend to act out in desperation when they feel insignificant.
Absolutely. And, Zach and I were talking a lot before the recording. We actually probably spent about half an hour chatting before the recording. We should have recorded it, Zach. It was so good. And we were saying about how people, in the workplace, they want to feel like their voice is heard or that they matter or they have something that they can contribute that's going to help make the organization better, or that you can acknowledge that they have got knowledge that you may not have or an experience that you may not have. And all of this it's not difficult, but I think what you do in the book beautifully is actually for people who might be a bit worried or not sure how to make
Mm.
people feel like they matter. You give them the playbook. It's fantastic. And you know what? Your book also, it reminds me, there's another book that I really like, which is by Graham Alcott. The book is called Kind, The Quiet Power of Kindness at Work. I had him on the show. He's brilliant. You'd
Hmm.
really like him. And I love one phrase he said, and it made me think a little bit about what you were talking about there, the mattering deficit. He said that nice is telling people what they want to hear. Kind is telling people what they need to hear, which I loved,
Mm.
right? And he actually said it's actually easy to be nice. It's harder to be kind, because nice would be, Zach, you know what? That was a great podcast recording we just did. Now, if I didn't think it was great, a kind would be, Zach, we let's do another edit because we missed a few little bits there. I think we could have done better, or I didn't think you sold the book well enough. That would be
Mm.
kind. Nice is easy,
Yeah, I
and
agree. And
it
kind
make
takes skills,
go on.
and kindness takes
It takes a
skill.
lot of skills. It takes a lot of skills. And when I was thinking about your book and reading the book, and you had put up a post recently about it's hard for anything to matter to someone who doesn't believe they matter. Feeling insignificant threatens our basic survival instincts, which we talked about. But what I loved was you said two things happen when people don't feel they matter. They withdraw, stay silent, escape, or disengage, or they act out in desperation, lash out, retaliate, you know. And you said here, obviously, we're facing this mattering deficit, and we are all responsible. This is what I loved, because it reminded me of Graham Alcott with the, easy to be nice, harder to be kind. Show up in your next interaction and commit to truly seeing, hearing, and valuing the person across from you. I love that.
I think that what all of us in organizations, whether we're a leader, whether we're an individual contributor, wherever we are, have to realize is that we can't solve our issues at the programmatic level. These things can only be solved at the interactional level. So, if you go back to January 2025, Gallup released their latest employee engagement report. Now, we've been hearing from Gallup for 20 years how disengaged we are. It's like a flat line, it hasn't changed. But this year, it's the lowest it's been in 10 years. That's interesting, and for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, just 7 out of 10 of us say that we're emotionally invested in our work. But two, we have also invested over $2 billion collectively in well-being programs, DEI programs, the employee engagement industry, like consulting services to improve your employee engagement, is a $1 billion industry now for the first time ever. Wages have increased about 42% in the last 8 years. We've invested more in perks than ever, yet people are more disengaged than ever. And this goes back to that work on kindness that you mentioned. When you look at two data points that are driving this disengagement crisis, the first data point, it should be very sobering for everybody listening. Just 30% of people, 39% of people actually, in that sample of 15,000, strongly agreed that someone at work cared for them as a person. That's the lowest that's ever been. Just 30% said someone at work could name their unique potential. So again, this isn't an disengagement crisis. It's a mattering deficit. And
Mm.
and you can't solve it through perks or programs. You can't perk or program your way out of this. You can only solve it through daily interactions. Daily interactions in which people do feel cared for, not cared about, cared for. You can care about someone from afar. You can say you care about your people, but to care for people, you have to get up close. You have to
Yeah.
understand them. You have to demonstrate kindness. And I'm going to go a step further with kindness. I think we actually have to go beyond empathy to compassion. Empathy is coming to understand someone's struggle, seeking understanding. But compassion is actually taking an action to alleviate that struggle, whether that person thinks they need it or not.
Yeah.
For example, there are some things that you have to do in organizations that are compassionate, that aren't nice, but you're actually doing something that someone else needs because you identify a need that's getting in the way of them doing their best work, for example. Um, and this can only be solved in interactions. And the problem is, though, is that we're having lower quality interactions than ever in all
Yeah.
aspects of life.
Well, because a lot of it's hidden behind, like, Zoom calls, etc., and like people have become quite transactional. I'm so with you on that as well in what you said about people, like big organizations throw programs at things. I think that sometimes comes from someone in a very senior role goes, "We've got to improve this." It's easy to just, in some ways, roll out a program and you put it in your board report or whatever, and you say, "We've rolled out a program. 60 percent of the organization have opened an email on it," or whatever, right? And actually you miss the point with that, right? Because sometimes it is just about teaching leaders and people how to interact with each other, how to make people feel like they're important. People spend, or some organizations spend so much on purpose as well, like trying to come up with a
Yes.
purpose for an organization. And actually sometimes it's about the manager telling their people the purpose they have in this long, like, so many people in organizations are so far from the customer, so far from the big lofty purpose: we are here to make blah 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 better every day. And someone that's sitting in some operations team is like, how does that apply to
Right,
me
right,
here
right.
doing this? Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I think this is a good point. It's a good point you bring up. Like good leaders and well-intentioned organizations will tell people that they matter. I think the great organizations and great leaders have the skill set to show them exactly how they matter every day. And I think that's a very important distinction. My first book was about purpose, and I actually wish I didn't write it at that time, because this book, I think, is the prequel. Because in
Ah,
order to have purpose, to have a contribution, you first must believe that you're worthy of contributing, right? And
yeah,
if
yeah.
you want somebody to use their strengths or talents to make a difference or contribute, they first have to believe they have strengths and talents. If you want somebody to share their
Ah,
voice, they first have to believe their voice is significant. In fact, I wanted my publisher to call the book "That Mattering Comes First," because mattering comes before many of the things we say we want in organizations. One of the reasons why I think organizations don't invest in this, don't invest in reskilling their people to have these interactions, is that we have this subliminal view, especially in the Western world, that people should be valued once they add value.
yeah.
So
Mm,
so we expect people to just, buck up, pull themselves up by their bootstraps and add value and
mm,
be motivated and be self-starters. And it's not up to
mm.
me to give you a sense of significance. But that's antithetical to what we know about human psychology. People don't add value on their own. People have to be valued to add value. We must feel
I
valued to add
so
value.
agree.
The reason why
I
is that
so
when
agree.
when I as a leader see, hear, value you, show you every day how you make a difference, you develop the confidence, the self-esteem, the belief that I'm worthy, self-efficacy, the belief that I'm capable, needed to add value. And the more you add value, the more you see how you are valued, the cycle continues. And the result is all the things we say we want in organizations: motivation, engagement, productivity, performance, well-being. But those are only the lagging indicators of the leading indicator of the human energy that comes from knowing that our presence makes a difference.
My God, Zach, you are like, we've never had a guest on who just articulates things so beautifully. I'm like sitting here going, I feel like I'm just listening to the show. I'm like, normally I'm thinking of the next question, but that is so on point what you're saying. I mean, if we could just get more people and leaders to think like this, and Zach and I talked about this before we did the recording. We are firm believers, both of us, that if you get the leadership level right in an organization, you can have huge impact, right? And getting leaders, in some ways, I always say start with the leaders, at least get them to think
Right.
about who the people in their teams are and why they matter. Each person has a, like, I'm not stupid. Some people need to find their happiness elsewhere. They, they may not be good at their job. Let's be honest as well, right? I've had some people in teams where I'm like going, you need to find your happiness elsewhere because, this is not the right job for you. But 9 out of 10
Absolutely.
people, are coming in, they're doing a good job. Sometimes it's the system isn't set up properly, or they're dealing with a bad process, or they're dealing with a difficult client. And sometimes I would say to some staff, I go, you know what, you've actually got the two most difficult clients. There's a reason for that. You're brilliant at navigating that, right? Because
Mm.
sometimes I've gone into teams where they're like going, oh, someone else is telling me I've got all of the top clients, blah, 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 blah. Like I'm like known as the best, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, when Margaret over there has the two most difficult clients, and I want to acknowledge Margaret as well, because they are very difficult and she does a great job of navigating the many requests that come through from them. And, it's really, I don't think it's difficult to do.
People, I love this. People can do hard things when they know someone has their back. Right. When we
Yeah.
know that we already
Yeah.
matter enough to someone else, we have a secure base, like you mentioned earlier. You read that earlier. We have a secure base from which we can go out, experiment, take risks, fail, learn, because we know someone has our back. That's where confidence comes from. A lot of people misidentify. They think that confidence comes from like sitting in your office chanting self-affirmations to yourself. But confidence,
You don't do
conf-
that?
no, I don't. But
No, okay.
confidence comes because we know someone has our back. We know we already
I
matter
completely
enough to
agree.
someone else. That's not threatened, and that's what leaders are in organizations. So when an organization comes to me and says we want people to be innovative, I'm saying, okay, great. Like then make sure that they feel that they can speak up, they can experiment, they can take
Yeah.
risks, they can fail without fear that they're going to be retaliated against, judged, or their future reputation is going to be threatened. Because when you do that, you're invoking someone's survival instinct to matter, and they're fearful of having that broken, so they're not going to experiment, they're not going to take risks, they're not going to innovate. Innovation is a lagging indicator of feeling that you matter to somebody, feeling that your voice matters, your ideas matter, that you have that safety net. But so many organizations want innovation, for example, or they want high performance without doing the rigorous work to make sure the relational groundwork is there. The secure base is built so people can launch out and perform and innovate. And that's what I'm trying to get people to think about with rigor. What are those skills to cultivate that secure base from which your people can launch out, experiment, take risks, learn, because they know that someone has their back. Someone
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
believes that they matter and shows them how they matter, and that's not threatened. That's where true performance comes from.
Yeah, you're right. And you know what? Innovation, I like that you touched on that, right? Trying to get people to be innovative. I worked for one particular person, I won't mention names, but was someone that literally you couldn't do anything without having to send them an email. Literally, we were all nervous wrecks, like
Yeah.
literally, that this person would go to a meeting, hear something, come back, start screaming. Like it was crazy. And her boss, I shouldn't have said that now. Anyway, their boss said to me, why don't you like working with that person? I said, look, they just stifle my entrepreneurial spirit. I have nothing left in the tank because all you're doing all day is answering 3,000 emails
Mm.
to kind of keep them happy. So you don't have anything left in the tank, and they don't trust. Trust is so, like you do need trust with your boss. Like you mentioned that a minute ago, right? They have to have your back. They have to, you have to trust that they're not going to throw you under the bus when you
Mm.
come up, you've done an idea and it hasn't worked out, that they then go, well, it was his idea. He made a big boo-boo, blah, blah. You're never going to hear from me again then, right?
Yeah, think about the last time you trusted somebody you feared. It says it can't go, they don't go together. I mean, in
No.
fact, there's a solid body of research that shows that trust is impossible without care. Like if I don't feel cared for by you first, I won't trust you. This actually relates back to
Mm.
a lot of leaders say to me, well, Zach, I need people to perform. Like if we don't perform, if we don't produce, we won't have a company for them to feel that they matter within. which I totally get, right?
Of
Metrics,
course.
financial metrics, production, all that's important. But, there's a reason why about 40% of performance improvement conversations fail, the research finds. And the reason is that people critique people before they demonstrate their care for them. Like the performance improvement conversation, for example, begins days, weeks, and months before that conversation ever happens by building the relational groundwork. What the researchers find is that people don't respond well to critique or demands to improve their performance because they don't feel seen, heard, or understood by the person giving them the
Mm,
feedback. So I don't
hmm.
care how much you demand of me. What you say is not going to matter to me if I don't first believe that I matter to you, no matter how forcefully you say it. And then here's what organizations do, and here's what leaders do. When they can't connect with people, they control them. So when we also we control what we can't connect with. We control what we don't understand. So when we don't have the skills to understand people, to see them, to notice them, to hear them, or we're not willing to take our time and use the time to do that, people tend to default to fear-based leadership and control because it's easier, it's a shortcut. But because you're here on this podcast right now, and maybe not with that prior boss, you can see that fear doesn't last as a motivator. It
Absolutely.
may get you short-term results from your workforce to 2 or 3
Yeah.
months, but it does not last. Trust lasts, and
Trust, trust, trust.
trust is
It's
built through the skills of care, which I don't think we're as robustly integrating and scaling into organizations today as we need to be.
no. Well, have you heard the phrase trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is like, it takes a lot to earn trust, but as you said, you come back and you shout at people or there's fear, then the trust is gone. And it's very difficult to come back from. Now, back to the book quickly, because we haven't got much more time, and I really want people to get across that the research in this book that you and your team have done is just brilliant, right? And I love that it says that your research, it's on mattering, shows that mattering is creating small, meaningful interactions so people feel, as you've said a few times now, noticed, affirmed, and needed.
Mm.
And I love it. Do you call it the NAN framework, NAN
Well,
framework,
my
which is
Australian friends do. My Australian clients do because Nan means grandmother in
yes,
Australia.
exactly. That's what
So the
I've lived
Nan,
in Australia for a long time.
if you have a grandmother who have fond memories of, some of my Australian clients
Yes,
remember it by saying Nan. I've been calling it
the NAN,
NAN, but the Nan thing,
the NAN. I called it
I
the
have an
NAN.
Australian group of clients that I worked with who have really spread this, and so the Nan model, I guess you can call it that.
I'm calling it the NAN model. I've been calling it that the last few weeks. But yeah, so just for our listeners, NAN, noticed, affirmed, needed. And I loved it. Notice, seeing and hearing others with presence and attentiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Affirmed, reflecting back someone's unique value and contribution, which Zach and I gave a few examples there of, really highlighting their unique value and contribution. And needed, I love that, showing others how they are indispensable to a shared purpose. Like, it's really simple. They're very simple. And what I love is that you go beyond the theory in the book and you give these actionable tools and reflective kind of practices to do. Now, I love this one, the so that mindset. Loved that. Encouraging reframing everyday tasks in terms of their broader purpose. I'm writing this memo to my team so that they are aligned and confident.
Or expressing to people and making sure everybody knows that they're so that for
Yeah.
everything that they're doing. It's twofold, and that actually comes from a custodian that we interviewed, and we said, what's the most meaningful part of your job? And she said, cleaning the bathrooms in these university dormitories. And I was broke researcher mode, and I said, that
Yeah.
sounds pretty gross. And she said to me, Zach, it's the part of my job I hate the most, but I have to do it every week. So every time I go into that bathroom, I say to myself, I'm cleaning this bathroom so that these kids don't get sick. And she goes, and every time I remind myself of that, I can't think about my job differently. And it also is a really interesting thought too, that what's purposeful isn't always pleasurable.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
often try to seek pleasure in our work, or we're taught to seek pleasure all the time. Like, this should feel good to me. But that's actually not where long-term motivation comes from. Motivation comes from meaningfulness. I know that what I'm doing matters, not the objective pleasure of a task. So adding that so that I'm doing this so that what, when you can really vividly bring the human being that's inevitably at the end of everything that you do or don't do in a day, if you work in a human organization, which we all do, if we can bring that in to what we're doing and how we're thinking about what we're doing, then you almost realize that you can't not matter. You're giving yourself that evidence of your significance. But it takes some work. Like, she had to work at
It
that.
takes work.
That mindset. Like, I thought it was just very amazing, that mindset. Or like you mentioned, the needed piece. Some of the organizations that I've worked with that do this really well, they use this practice called laddering, where, they have this bigger
Yeah.
purpose at the top of the ladder. And at the bottom of the ladder is their work group's work tasks. The next rung up is a tangible, measurable objective that task is needed for. The next rung up is a measurable objective that task was needed for, all the way up to how it's going to deliver some bigger purpose or goal. And or leaders who are really good at this are relentless in that ladder. Like, every task has to have the ladder, and people have to measurably see it. And over time, what happens is when you have a leader like that, when and I think that leaders can be architects of meaning, because when you have a leader like that gives you the scaffolding every day, and it's in your environment every day, it's almost impossible not to believe it. And that's what I give the example. That's what NASA did when they were going to the moon. They had these ladders to the moon. And that's why many of you have probably heard the story of when John F. Kennedy was going to the Space Center and he saw a janitor there and he said, "Hey, what do you do here?" The janitor very casually just said, "Oh, I'm putting a person on the moon," went back to his work. That's a
Love
nice
it.
story to tell. But archival studies actually shows that it came from the rigorous practice of consistently laddering people's small tasks to its inevitable outcome. That's what builds belief.
I love that. I mean, there's so many other examples like this in the book, because you've also got the cognitive job crafting. Listen, you got to go and check all this out. I also loved in the book, because you talked about Rotterdam Hospital, and it was interesting because they have that kind of check-in process each day, whether you're red, amber, green, and I thought it was great, because most meetings I find are a bit like update fests. I share this, Zach, right? Honestly, this happened to me in Australia. One team I worked in, every day for the daily update, no one had their cameras on. This was like COVID time. No one had their cameras on. And people would start and they go, "Okay, over to you, Cathal." And this is what 90% of the people said. "What are you working on today, Cathal?" "I'm continuing on with work already mentioned." And I was new to this team and I'm like, what the hell? Continuing? I don't know what work was mentioned, And I actually brought my partner in to hear this one day. I was like, I'm listening to 40 of people just saying, "I'm continuing on with work already mentioned." And when it came to me, I said, "This is what I'm working on today for blah, and I'm also working on some of this. And so that I fit in this team, I'm continuing on with the work that I just mentioned." And when I thought of that, when I was reading about this Rotterdam hospital with the red, amber, green, stories of significance are important. Making sure that you are checking in on how people are doing within the team, and then getting into it, right? But just briefly tell them about the Rotterdam
So
hospital.
I mean, we talked about that practice of needing, like laddering people to the bigger purpose. Affirming people is showing them how what they're doing is significance. Noticing that first piece is really taking an interest in gathering the data so that you can truly see people. And one of the pieces of data that's important is the data on people's energy and emotions, of how people are doing. And Rotterdam Eye Hospital was having trouble with patient satisfaction, burnout rates among nurses, and engagement problems. And if you've ever gone into a huddle for a group of clinicians in a healthcare setting, here's how they typically go. And I've observed them. Here's what's clinically wrong in every room. Go have a great shift. They're like shift huddles. It's no wonder people are burned out. So what the researchers did is they had one half of the hospital do just a simple red, yellow, green check-in. Red means you're offline. There's some things going on. Yellow means you're good. But you're able to be present, but there's some things that are stressing you out. Green means you're good. You're in flow. And they had the people just do it. It was non-judgmental. And in fact, the clinical lead was not instructed to go psychoanalyze their colors or try to change it. It was simply for awareness. And the group that did this over 6 months had almost 2 points higher on a patient satisfaction scores after controlling for numerous variables, lower engagement, lower burnout. And when the researchers followed up and asked why, they simply said, we're having better conversations in our break room. And the reason why is because if you have more data, you can lead people better. For example, if you and I were in a check-in and you were a red and we jumped onto a virtual call together, do you think I'm going to look at you and be like, oh, I hope you figure that one out? Or am I more likely to say, oh, I noticed you were red earlier. How's it going? Anything I can do to help? Or imagine today is the day that I thought that I should debate the project you've been working on in front of everybody in that meeting. I know you're a red now, so am I likely to do that? Probably not. We have systems and processes for checking in on the equipment, the processes, the controls, but we tend to leave how people are doing up to chance, checking in on how the people are. One of my favorite things when I'm flying is when I go to a gate and I see the pilot put on their vest and they go check the plane. That just
Oh
makes me
yeah.
it just makes me feel better for some reason. I fly all the time, but I'm like, oh, they got it. They're checking it. This is good. But one of my clients is a large airline, and I asked one of the leaders that I worked with there. I said, "Who checks the pilot every day?" And
It's a great
they
point.
couldn't answer the question. They had a psychological assessment every 3 months, thank goodness, but they couldn't answer the question. Nobody was checking in on how the people were, the flight attendants, the gate agents every day. We check the equipment. Why don't we check the people? The people that are using the equipment. And so one part of noticing, that first part of the noticing, affirming, needing model, is making sure you have a process to understand how
Mm.
people are. And to your point about meetings, leaders all the time in remote work say, my people don't want to turn on their cameras. You got to make it worth it for people to want to turn on their cameras.
Yes.
I,
Yeah.
I am not going to turn on my camera if someone's sending me exchanging information that I can get in an email or on an Excel sheet that I can read on my own. I will turn on my camera if we're resolving a way of working together. If you're asking me how my parents doing because they were in the hospital and I'm struggling. If you're asking me what I can take off, you can take off my plate as I'm trying to prioritize a project. So the best leaders don't spend their time on what to do with one another. They spend their time on how to be with one another. And so here's one rule of thumb. Do not spend your rare time together virtually in person on exchanging information.
I'm so with you. And it's interesting you said about getting people to turn on the camera. That day that I kind of jokingly said, I'm working on this, and so that I fit in, I'm continuing on with work already mentioned. Everyone put on their camera. I'm not joking you. Cameras started coming on. It was so
Yeah.
funny.
Do you
And I
want to
mean,
get people to turn on
some
their
of,
cameras? I say this, say, hey, okay, today we're going to talk about what everybody's thinking, but no one's saying. You'll all of a sudden see the camera start turning on. Whoa, wait
seriously,
a minute.
it was hilarious. It was hilarious. Now we're on to our final few quick questions because we got to get late. We got to get Zach out of here. He's got an important meeting after this. Interestingly, this morning, you have a big. I love in the book, and we won't get time to talk about this in detail, but this focus on thinking about how we're educating our children, etc. Right, on mattering, and I love this. And interestingly, this happened this morning. Our daughter was out of school yesterday, sick, and she was back in this morning. Miss Smith, when our daughter Ayla ran into the classroom, Miss Smith gave her the biggest hug and said, you know how much I missed you. We all missed you yesterday.
I love that.
I'm not joking you. Our daughter walked off to the other play area that she was going to, like she was like dancing going along. Like, you know, she
of
was,
course.
I swear that
Wow.
happened today. I'm not even joking you. And I had just been reading your book, and I had to share this because I love how you think about mattering for schools and how your research gives an immediate and kind of actionable mandate to help people in their communities feel like they matter. So, you know, if you're from a school or you're in education, this is a great book for you as well. I mean, Zach,
absolutely.
I love
Yeah.
that.
I think these five, these 5 words that people tell us all the time, that help them feel that they matter. If it wasn't for you, this wouldn't have been like this, or we missed you because. And that just, I mean,
It's brilliant.
the essence of being human really is knowing that your presence and absence means something to just one other person. And, I'll go a step further. I'll leave everybody with a question that you can ask every relationship that you have, whether it's in work or not in work. And this is a question that's been profoundly impactful for me. Ask people around you, when you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing? When you feel that you
Love
matter to
that.
me, what am I doing? I was doing an interview with a journalist for a magazine article. The magazine article never got published. I don't know if I didn't give a good interview or not, but um, but we were
They were
talking
too
about this.
nice. They didn't
I
give
know
you the kind feedback.
she said that right. She said that she had a 13-year-old daughter, and that she was having trouble connecting. And she asked me just at the end of the interview, like a personal question, like, "Do you have any advice?" And so why don't you ask her, like, when you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing? So I got an email, this long email, like a couple weeks later, and she said, I asked her that question, and she said it's when I'm taking her to school and we're sitting in the car and we're not even talking, but we're listening to her favorite music. And she said, I never thought that just me being with her in that moment was when she most felt that she mattered to me. I had thought that that was just a routine. It was a chore.
Mm,
It was in
mm.
a routine that was getting in the way of me getting to work, but that was everything to her. And I never would have known that if I didn't ask the question. And I think that we have that. I think that we have that with all the people in our lives. Like, and I think asking your employees, like, when you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing? Write it down. Do more of that. Ask your partners. Ask your children. If you're a teacher, ask your kids. Like, when you feel that you matter here in this classroom, what are we doing? What are the people around you doing? Because while we have this noticing, affirming, and needing model, people experience being noticed, affirmed, and needed in different ways.
Mm,
And so it's
mm.
really important to ask that
I
question.
I love it. I love it. And I know you've also your 99-year-old granddad has a lovely
Oh, yeah.
question
He's
that
102 now.
102. Oh my
Yeah, because
God.
I
And
was
he
writing this
says,
3 years ago. Yeah.
because he writes on a card to you, how do you improve the moment? I just
Yeah,
love that
I
too.
know. He wrote it in
Love.
every card. Happy birthday. How do you improve the moment? I mean, since I was like
I mean,
7.
that is just amazing. Now, here's our final rapid questions. This will take us a minute. Um, Now, we're all about being better at work. That's our podcast. What's the smallest possible change our listeners could do to have an impact and a better day at work tomorrow? I think I know what you're going to say.
Ask your people when you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing? And do
Love.
more of that.
Can you share something you learned or experienced at work that unexpectedly made your whole life better?
Hmm. I was in the midst of a bit of a tour. I was doing a lot of workshops, and I was on my last one. It was like 4 in like 2 weeks, and I was just feeling really not energized, and I didn't think it went really well. And I got home, and again, about a month later, it was on Mattering. I got an email from a woman whose husband, she didn't want to go to the session originally, but her husband had just passed away. He was a school principal. He just passed away with pancreatic cancer. And he said that the session gave her language to talk about him, his legacy, to his daughter, about why he mattered, being able to spot his
Oh
unique
my
gifts.
God.
And the workshop reminded her that she mattered, that she had a role, that she mattered in her relationships. And I don't get emails like that too often, but those are the things that keep me going. So now whenever I'm like tired or I have a workshop or I'm going into an organization, uh, I remember that story because I say to myself, there's someone here who's going to have this experience, but they're not going to tell me. And I have to show up as if they are. So
I love that.
it's sort of changed how I work.
Wow, that's kind of like blown the whoo. That's pretty big. And look, here's our final question. What can you recall the best advice you've ever received that you think makes you better at your job or at work?
Yeah, I mean, the best advice that I've ever gotten, and it was from a coach who told me that the best the best thing you can do any day, your next great act is your next interaction. So if you're having a bad
Love.
day, you don't let the circumstances of your day take away your power to choose how you show up in your next interaction. And everybody listening, you do not need your organization's approval to care in your next interaction. You do not need your organization's permission. You don't need
That's a great
anybody's
point.
permission, right? I live in Colorado. We try to grow a garden, but it's like, you've been to Fort Collins. It's like, it's a semi-arid environment. So what you have to do if you want to grow a garden is you have to create microclimates.
Mm.
And I think that don't let people take away your power to create microclimates of mattering wherever you are.
I love that. What a way to finish our chat, Zach. Thank you. This was brilliant. The Power of Mattering. Pick up your copy now, everyone, filled with practical advice and helpful exercise that gives leaders at all levels the skills they need to revitalize their teams by showing people how they matter. And if you want more information on Zach, go to Zach Mercurio. That's ZachMercurio.com. And there you'll find out more on his books, speaking, and much, much more. Thank you. It was brilliant to chat to you. I loved it.
Good. Thank you.
There you go. Zach, how great was he? I freaking loved that chat. I got so much from it. The Power of Mattering is the book. Check it out. Super, super, super informative. If anyone is in the world of work, you got to check out this book. Guess what? Annette Sloan, she's back with me next Thursday, where we will dissect those insights from the amazing Zach. Plus, of course, listeners' questions. Back next Thursday, Annette and I. If you've got a question, drop us an email, betteratwork.net. And of course, as well, you can send me a message or Annette through LinkedIn. And I know lots of you have been doing that. We've got a few through LinkedIn recently, which we love as well. I am Cathal Quinlan. This has been Better at Work. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you really soon. Bye-bye, everyone.